Okay, so I was just about to head to sleep, but holy shit, I can't stand this discourse. So I really have to just react. I don't know if it's gonna be the entire video because it's like 5 a.m. at night on my local time. So we'll see what it says. But this is a video that Elden Ring DLC is too hard. It's not, by Alana Pierce. And I know that Asmongold did a reaction to it, but it's such a fucking brain dead take that it makes me kind of mad. But yeah, let's just take it. Oh shit, I need to change my... There we go.
The day has finally come. The people have finally spoken.
Yep,
So listen
there we
up,
go.
Miyazaki. Elden Ring's DLC is too hard. I have like a couple of like kind of very different branching takes to make in this
All right,
video.
let's hear them.
About accessibility and why I think accessibility is really important and how common of a conversation accessibility is with FromSoft games.
Yeah. Accessibility in certain games, not every game, is very important. I think that they're good if the developers really want to use them. I don't think they are required to ever use accessibility options. I fucking suck at aiming. I can't aim for shit in a shooter game. But I don't want and I don't really need accessibility options that makes it easier for me to aim. I don't want the auto aim. I don't want anything else. Plus I'm colorblind to a certain degree. I don't need that either. If I'm not good at the game and if I can't aim for shit, I just won't play the game, and that's fine. All right, enough ranting for now.
Why I do think it would be great if disabled players could play Elden Ring, even though it is already currently their most accessible game. There's a lot of room for improvement. But we're also going to talk about I don't even know where to start. There are a bunch of negative reviews on Steam for Elden Ring because Shadow of the Erdtree is considered too hard. I never thought...
Partly, most of the negative reviews are actually for the drop in performance with the DLC, and I've tried to read through a lot of them. Some are for the difficulty, and some I tend to agree with. Some of the difficulty is kind of arbitrary, and it doesn't really feel fair. If a boss is fair and still very, very, very difficult, then it's fine. Ninja Gaiden Black, for example, I've beat that game on Master Ninja mode. So before you come at me, don't fucking come at me. I beat that game in Master Ninja mode, Master Ninja on every freaking chapter. So don't at me. Some of those bosses are very, very difficult, but most of them does feel fair. And the same applies to this game, to Elden Ring. If most of the bosses are hard, that's no problem as long as they're kind of fair. I found spoilers if you haven't played the game yet, the DLC yet. I found the dancing lion to be complete shit because of the camera, not the design itself necessarily, but it was very hard to follow along with the attacks when I couldn't really see what was going on all the time. I feel like that's one of the big issues that boss has.
We would get to a landscape where people will admit that they found a FromSoft game too hard. Like, even if people do,
That's okay.
I never thought that they would admit it. Now, it's worth noting that the presence of this has been a little bit exaggerated. A lot of the negative reviews on Steam are also people complaining about the performance problems, which are there. They are consistent. And that's right, a separate story that I've spoken about before that people did not want to hear, which is that, yeah, FromSoft really gets a pass for a lot of things sometimes.
Yep. I agree.
The reviews were all 10 out of 10, even though most of these people are playing on PC and there are PC performance problems.
I agree. Elden Ring is the 10 out of 10 game for me.
With these games, those are totally valid, and thankfully have been patched. So, though, has difficulty.
Most of them, not every one of them.
There are like two sides of this, right? Okay. There's a thing when people talk about FromSoft games that I always find really interesting. People will say, but it's part of the appeal that like you're fighting something really hard and then you finally overcome it. That's part of the appeal of games.
Yes.
No. While there are things that FromSoft games do incredibly well, like I am obsessed with their boss designs and their animation. Like for all the things we love about it, their bosses are so...
I'm gonna try to calm myself because she kind of triggered me in just that sentence, but let's hear her out first.
Impressive in terms of art direction and animation. They don't even need to be. Like, oh my god, they're just so good at that. The sense of discovery
I agree.
is unparalleled. The uniqueness of the world is near unparalleled. Like there are a lot of things that FromSoft games do really well. But saying part of the appeal is beating the... But it's not part of the appeal.
Yes, it fucking is. Shut the fuck up. This makes me so mad. Part of the appeal of a Souls game, any Souls game, is overcoming a difficult boss that you've been stuck on for a long time. That is part of the appeal for many. Doesn't mean that it's part of the appeal for everyone out there, but it's part of the appeal for many people, including myself. When I've been stuck on a boss, I think one of the most egregious cases was Malenia. I think I was stuck on that boss for almost, I think it was 2+ hours on that boss. And when I finally beat her, I thought that the waterfall dance was bullshit, still is. But when I beat her, it was a sense of relief and accomplishment. I felt accomplished because I had beaten a very difficult boss that I had struggled with beforehand. That's part of the appeal. You feel kind of like you did something, you accomplished something so incredibly difficult that not everyone does. Same way when I beat Ninja Gaiden Black on the Master Ninja difficulty and got Master Ninja on every chapter, that's part of the appeal too, because I felt really accomplished. It was one of my goals as a gamer to do that challenge and complete it, and I did. And now I can put it to the rest. I can always have that as my badge of accomplishment, that I did manage to beat that game despite the many deaths I suffered, and that's part of the appeal of that game.
It's the entire design of the game. It's the whole game. It is the core ethos, the core...
I don't agree with that.
Any FromSoft game is that you are supposed to approach a boss, be willing to die the first several times as you assess their moveset.
I disagree on that a bit more. She's right with Elden Ring a bit more. That you're almost supposed to die the first time you face a boss in Elden Ring. Almost. But the former Souls games wasn't like that at all.
That you figure out the puzzle that is beating this boss. You've retained information about their movesets, about what kills you, about how you can avoid it, and you roll into them. And then after a certain amount of deaths, which are to be totally expected, if you beat an Elden Ring boss in less than like 3 deaths, in my opinion, that's an RNG fluke and not you playing the game well.
What a stupid fucking opinion to have. Yeah, if you beat a boss in less than 3 tries, that's an RNG fluke and you were just being lucky. You didn't play the game well. What a fucking stupid thing to say about any game, actually.
Well, the big part of the game is learning how that stuff works. That's the point. You go in there, you gather...
So if you're reactionary and you have good reactions and you can almost read the boss well, you savor your... resources, and you beat the boss because you're good at the game. Yeah, that's a fluke. What?
That data, and then you finally beat them. That is the point of these games. The whole point is for them to be extremely challenging. I do think that people
the whole point
about the Shadow of Erdtree DLC should get good. By which I mean just pay attention to the things the game gives you that can make it way easier. That's not to say you're not allowed to complain, okay? We are also really weird. I'm already tangenting inside my tangent. We are really weird about acting like FromSoft games can't be criticized.
Yep, I agree with that. 100%.
You are allowed to complain about finding it too hard or feeling like a certain boss isn't balanced or feeling like a hitbox is like... You can complain about those things and be valid.
100%.
Stop acting like any criticism of a FromSoft game makes you a fake gamer. First,
100%.
I apologize. Back to the video. Course correcting. Patch dropped for the DLC. Meaning that this to me would indicate that FromSoft, gonna lean over a little, kind of agrees with the criticisms, which is pretty nice.
Somewhat.
Miyazaki did say that he wanted Shadow of the Erdtree to be the hardest thing they ever made, and it seems like that works very well. People are finding it extremely difficult, even people who have been a long-time FromSoft fan. That was the intention. I mean, it would have been crazy to let you just like finish Elden Ring and then just continue as though you were still playing Elden Ring. Like, they did have to up the difficulty for the DLC.
No, they did not have to, but they wanted to, so they did it. Every developer, every studio has a certain goal in mind when creating a game. Some want their game to be easier. Some even make their games to be easier and easier and easier the farther you get in the game. Not every game has to be like that, though.
Even justify its own existence, in my opinion. But basically,
and I agree with the change list. I myself found it to be a good change. That's fine too. But they didn't have to do those changes. They realized, oh, maybe we overtuned the game to what we wanted, to what our goal was with the DLC, so that we tune it back just a little bit, and now it's good. That's it. That's fine.
Attack and damage negation curve scaling of the Shadow Realm blessings have been revised. The attack and damage negation has been increased for the first half of the maximum amount of blessing enhancements, and the second half will now be more gradual. The attack and damage negation granted by the final level of blessing enhancements has been slightly increased.
That's
so
fine.
Again, I take this to mean that they like kind of agree, and they were like, oh, we maybe did make this too hard. Okay, our bad, which is super interesting. But there are things about this that, oh my god, I have so many opinions.
Just say them.
So messy. First,
just edit the video.
Shadow of the Erdtree tells you what you need to do to get good. And I think really, it just requires patience. You may be familiar with scatter tree fragments. I'll keep this quick in case you literally are familiar. But basically, this is effectively a means of an accessibility feature that exists inside of Shadow of the Erdtree.
I disagree. Somewhat at least. I don't really like the scatter tree fragments myself. I found them quite annoying because in one way, Shadow of the Erdtree encourages exploration, but in other ways it punishes exploration too. So it kind of goes against itself somewhat, especially with scatter tree fragments. But they are also a form of the more you get, the easier it gets too. So
Erdtree, because it is optional, and I love that they've done this. So, Scattertree Fragment is a new upgrade material in Elden Ring, debuting in the Shadow of Erdtree DLC. Scattertree Fragments are optional consumables that can be used to enhance simultaneously offensive and defensive capabilities at any sites of grace, acting like a permanent boost to your DLC damage dealt and damage negation. Basically, you go find these things, they will make you stronger in the game. If you are having trouble with a certain boss, you literally just have to go find these things. They are made solely for the DLC. They only work in the DLC. They do not work in the base game. They are there specifically for players who are having trouble with any bosses that are already there.
No,
it's totally fine, by the way.
That's not their entire
You're allowed to find it hard.
reason.
But they have been put in the game to give you that option. I love that they make this stuff optional. That it's like, yes, you have to go through effort to be able to do this. And in theory, you need to look up a walkthrough and find the locations of them. But I love that it's like a thing that is available to all players who are having trouble. Leave the boss. Cool.
They are optional. But okay, if they are optional, as you say, try to beat one of the harder bosses without any scatter tree fragments. They are so much harder, and any tiny mistake can mean death, and that's fine too. If you want the challenge, you can just not use them. That's fine. But for most of the player base, they aren't really optional. So kind of goes against your own. What the fuck are you saying? Okay.
The thing about Elden Ring in general, for, again, where accessibility is concerned, when new players to FromSoft games are concerned, is that you can just leave at any time. Go find these. The DLC will become easier for you. That is, they put it in there for you.
That's not an accessibility option, though. I disagree with that, because if you have to look up a guide to search for every one of these scatter tree fragments, and some you can't really find it until you progress to a certain point or a certain place where you find them, and then you have to fight certain enemies to get to that point, then it's not a form of accessibility. It's just a form of difficulty alting. How the fuck do you say that? Difficulty alternation. Can you say that? They're a form of altering the difficulty. They aren't a form of accessibility. That's an entirely different thing.
And I just feel like maybe a lot of people have missed it, which I guess is like part of also the design of Elden Ring, right? Is like, FromSoft games don't over-explain anything to you. But yeah, I'm finding this stuff very funny. These games are hard. We should be allowed to criticize things we don't like about them. They're not criticism. I do feel like Shadow of the Erdtree literally has told you the thing that you can do.
You've said that.
To make it easier.
Okay.
But at the same time, them patching it would imply to me that they were also like, maybe a bit much, which is funny. I'm not telling you to I'm telling you to use all of the features available to you to cater your experience, which is the coolest thing about accessibility in general.
That's not fucking accessible. This annoys me so fucking much today with the discourse about games. That's not accessibility. Accessibility will make the game easier to play for certain individuals that are disabled in certain ways. That's it. So for example, colorblind modes and different colorblind modes, that's a form of accessibility for games, in my opinion. One button click combinations in like fighting games, that's a form of accessibility as long as it's like offline modes. That's a form of accessibility for those games. And it would be a form of accessibility options for Elden Ring 2 if they had so certain individuals who or there aren't any let's take a game with rapid clicking, for example. In those games, certain individuals are having a lot of problems pushing buttons very fast because they don't have that finger motion capability. And one form of accessibility options in this case would be to make these games like you push and hold the button instead. And that's fine. It's just an accessibility option. But I disagree with this being...
It is time to talk about the incredibly cool virtual pro.
Oh yeah, let's have a fucking... okay, let's have a sponsor in the middle of this video, sure.
And use code Alana.
No, I
won't. More customization options. So this is the second half of this video, where I'm going to talk specifically about accessibility and even just a lot of people really not understanding the conversation about accessibility in Elden Ring. It has been brought up various times across various mediums by various people that Elden Ring is not, or FromSoft games in general, are not particularly accessible to disabled players. And people are asking for accessibility.
That's fine.
Are not actually asking for an easy mode. That isn't the intent.
That's fine too. People can ask for easy mode. That doesn't mean that the developer have to create an easy mode, or for that matter, any accessibility options at all. They don't have to. That's fine.
Here's the thing I want to spell out where accessibility is concerned. People who are disabled, I felt myself doing it, I'm going to do it, is another tangent. There are also multiple kinds of disabilities, especially when gaming is concerned.
It's so very hard to follow this video because she goes on tangents, like within tangents. She herself says so. Can you just stay on the topic and then when you've explained, go on the tangent?
There are long-term disabilities. There are situational disabilities. There are temporary disabilities. It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. You have a...
Whoa, what? I need to hear that again.
Disabilities. There are situational disabilities. There are temporary disabilities. It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid.
It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. That's the stupidest fucking shit I've ever heard uttered about a game in concerns to accessibility. What are you saying?
You have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring, you can't pause. That is a situational disability that you have, where the game not having the option for you to be able to pause, for example, is a hindrance for your particular disability, a situational disability. You may...
Okay. That's not a disability at all. Stupid fucking term. Guess what? If you have a kid, you're playing Elden Ring, and you put the kid to bed. The kid gets riled up for some reason and begins to scream a little and starts crying. Guess what? Put the fucking controller down and go help your fucking kid. What's the problem? Oh, stupid shit. The most stupid shit I've ever heard. Just put the controller down and go focus on your fucking child. Who cares? It's just a game in the end. It's just a game.
You need to pause to stop your kid from putting a fork into a socket, a power outlet.
If you play a game to that degree, where your kid manages to put a fucking fork in the socket, electrocutes itself, dies, then you are liable for that death. 100%. It's your fucking
In Australia, we call power outlets PowerPoints. But when I moved to the US, I got bullied one out of my vocab. I have trouble playing video games. You would need something to help you press certain buttons if you're playing Elden Ring. The third one, long-term, people who have long-term disabilities. That I do. I have tendonitis in both of my wrists from playing too many video games. Unironically, that is a thing, from tapping too much. That means any rapid button mashing in any game.
Look at that. The thing I brought up earlier. That's a form of disability, and it's a form of accessibility if you would like implement the button press and hold instead. It's a form of accessibility. This ain't it.
Game I'm going to have a lot of trouble with unless there are accessibility options to prevent that. It's part of what I worked on God of War Ragnarok. That's part of why I made an accessibility award show to like highlight this particular thing as prompts. I'm going to be in pain. Any of those things are concerned.
She rambles a lot, which I don't care about. If you have that disability, guess what? You're not going to be able to play every game out there. And that's fine. You should just accept that not every game is playable by you. And if I am in an accident and I get disabled, I can't really move my arms. Guess fucking what? I won't ever expect any game to cater to me that heavily. If I don't get to play any game ever again, then that's fine too. Guess what? I can watch TV
a misunderstanding
or movies.
Think disabled gamers, whoever else, want an easy mode. This is not the case. It's that the appeal of Elden Ring...
Some people want an easy mode though.
Being really fucking hard is also appealing to people with disabilities.
Yes.
They too want to play the extremely hard game.
Sorry for pausing a lot. And guess what? There is a gamer that I've heard of that played and managed to beat Elden Ring, I think, with only his mouth. I think it was him. If you really, really want something, yeah, it's gonna be freaking hard, but it's most likely possible in some way. Broly Legs, unfortunately, rest in peace, my man, was one of the best Chun-Li's in Street Fighter. That's a fact. And guess what? He was a paraplegic and he used his mouth to play those games. He was still that fucking good.
That is very hard for them to beat. They're not asking you to give them an easy mode and make it easy for them to get through. They're asking for a version of the game that can be played with their particular disabilities. So they can still enjoy really hard games as well.
The
complications with this conversation arise, I think, with Elden Ring specifically. Like, there are so many people who just dismiss it as like, shut up, who cares about you, you're disabled, which, you know, fuck
Some
off.
people are
Second,
like that.
People just assuming they're asking for easy mode, and that's not the case. It's not.
And guess what? People are entitled to their opinion in that regard. Like, oh, you have a disability that prevents you from playing this game. Well, it sucks. But guess what? It's just the way it is. If every video game developer would cater to everyone in the world, every game would be very similar. And every game would cost multitudes of millions of dollars more to just implement those options every time they're making a game. It's just not sustainable either. If you would pay for that's another discussion to have.
Not an easy, it's not even less difficulty, it's more options. But third is the unique challenge with FromSoft games of completing them being such a point of pride. They intentionally make these games difficult. Like I already said, this is an established ethos of these games. They are intentionally very difficult. Elden Ring is the broadest, the most open. You can use summons if you want to. If you want it to be harder, you don't have to. You can approach it.
I agree.
With as much or as little assistance as you want, and you have still completed the game. Controversial, I know, but yes, if you use summons, you've still finished the game.
Yes, I agree.
Play it. Do whatever you want.
Okay, shut the fuck up.
Just culture of beating a FromSoft game is such a point of pride for people. And how do you avoid
that's fine.
Taking away that point of pride? That is one-to-one with their design ethos. It is making you feel a sense of accomplishment.
It's not only a sense of accomplishment, because if you complete Dark Souls, for example, I completed it back on the PS3 era, and although the internet was shite back then and summoning was tedious and sometimes nigh impossible, I managed to summon someone I think 2-3 times, and it felt really good that most of my journey had been completed in solitude. I had been by myself completing it. That had been true in more ways than one. I completed the most of the game by myself in my room, sitting by myself, isolated somewhat. And I remember just having those helping me for I think 2-3 parts of the game meant so much, because I realized that they were facing the same obstacles that I was facing. I was somewhat not alone in this journey. They each had their own individual, unique journeys themselves. And I think that's also a form of togetherness that you can earn through these games with these players. Certain players, some are very annoying, I agree with that. Some are incredibly tedious to listen to, and they're just shoving their big dick energy in your mouth whenever they can, because they want to be better than everyone else. Those are very annoying. But then there are people who can share your experience in certain ways that makes these journeys even more impactful to yourself. So I tend to disagree with that somewhat.
For overcoming something very difficult. It's a feeling humans love. You get a sense of accomplishment. You feel like you did something of value. Humans love that. And Elden Ring's like that in video games on crack. Like, if I feel a sense of accomplishment every time I get an achievement because I collected 50 Who's-a Whatsits, it is like triple when I beat a boss in a FromSoft game. There are bosses in Sekiro where I beat them and I like threw my hands up in the air and screamed. There are so few other games that have that effect. And that's a feeling that I do think everybody should be able to have, catered to their own accessibility needs.
They are able to have that feeling, just not maybe exactly in the way that you intend to. Like I said, if we would cater to everyone, then games would be for no one.
Here's my pitch, okay? Hear me out, the internet. Here's my pitch for fixing the problems surrounding Elden Ring or FromSoft games in general being so, like just the discourse being so hotly contested. Like it's, like, I've been making fun of people this week for saying that if you played with someone...
You know why, though? Sorry for interrupting her again. You know why those games are so highly contested, especially currently, and why opinions are so volatile on both ends? It's because Elden Ring, and many agree with this, Souls games in general, are one of the few last bastions of game design where a game is allowed to be difficult, not have accessibility options, not be pandering to many different types of people. And that's fine too. Many people enjoy these games because they're so unique in that regard too. Most games today are pandering in certain ways to a certain amount of people. And back in the days, they were too. They pandered too. they try to find their own little bunch of people that really, alright, these people are gonna love our game. Let's pander to them. That's what you do when you market the game. But today they want to market to everyone. Everyone is included. And that doesn't really work because you're missing out on the core fans at the same time. And I think From Software has realized this already, in that they pander to their core audience first and foremost. And that's why they are so successful. And I find it kind of frustrating that so many, especially journalists and reviewers, miss today why that is.
Game that you cheated, even though it's a mechanic that's right there. It's literally intentionally there. Yeah. It would be like saying you didn't beat Shadow of the Erdtree because you used the scatter tree fragments. It's nonsense. They're in.
I agree.
Miyazaki put them in the game. It's cool.
It's in the game.
Adopt them or not adopt them based on how we want to experience the thing or the unique challenges that we have, because we're all fucking different people, right? Here's my pitch, okay, gamers? Hear me out. I haven't had this conversation with anyone, so I don't know how many holes there are, but this is my thought. What if, for every game that you finish, but especially for FromSoft games, there were an ending title screen that you could screenshot and you could share very easily that details exactly how you finish the game? Are people going to reply to each other who share that and be toxic about it? Yeah, people are going to be like, oh, you summons, you died, and beat you summons, I beat the game. Yeah, people are going to be dicks. But I feel like it would maybe prevent some of the extra accessibility specific gatekeeping.
No, it wouldn't.
All of these people who are vehemently against.
It wouldn't at all, because the core game would be changed. This is such a hole in the head take that I can't really believe it's being made. Oh, I take a screenshot of this game, of this shooter game that I finished. Guess what? I can't fucking aim. What? Okay, so I changed the entire game with having auto-aiming so I could finish it. Then why not just watch a gameplay reel on YouTube? Gameplay playthrough on YouTube.
Against accessibility options, which is really, again, just in-game customization options. No one's asking for less or more damage, but like less button presses or there's a large list of things that can make...
That's just not accessibility options. That's also difficulty options. That changes the core game. Play somewhat.
It easier for disabled players to play a really hard game and still have it feel really hard, but still be able to play it, you know? But what if you get a screen at the end with the credits that shows exactly
doesn't really matter
you played it or what options you had on or off? In my head, this would alleviate a lot of that discourse. People are saying like, no accessibility whatsoever because I want to be able to play Elden Ring.
I'm sorry, but she's just missing the entire point of this entire discussion. Feels like she's having an entire discussion by herself and trying to make it what it really shouldn't be about at all. So she's adding to the discourse she's complaining about.
Exact way that I want to be able to play it. And I feel like those people are shooting themselves in the foot because what if they get one of those temporary, situational, or short-term disabilities? You break your wrist, you're not going to be able to play Elden Ring. You have a kid, suddenly you can't play Elden Ring. Like,
why is that a problem? You have a kid. Yeah. If I would have a kid and I wanted that kid, guess what? I would be so freaking incredibly happy and joyous. I likely wouldn't really care about Elden Ring that much.
I feel like they say it when they don't have disabilities, but in 10 years when you do have some kind of disability, I feel like you're going to retroactively kind of regret that you were like, absolutely not, don't change anything. I finished Tunic. That game rules and is very hard. And after I finished it, I beat the final boss that you don't even have to, well, spoilers. She was so hard. She was so hard. It took me days. Tunic has an accessibility option in it that you can use to... It's basically God mode. I think you can prevent all damage. I beat the game without that and felt so accomplished and so proud of myself. And I don't care that that mode is there or that option is there to help other people who still want to experience the game without that. I think that's perfectly fine. But
guess what? That option is kind of applicable to Elden Ring 2. Just download Cheat Engine. What the fuck are you doing? Download Cheat Engine, cheat through the whole game. Who cares? But it's still a cheat. God mode is effectively a cheat too.
I would have liked just a little something at the end, even an achievement, to give me the credit for doing the hardest fights on what is effectively the hardest in-game possible difficulty because I didn't have those accessibility options on. You know what I mean? That's my thought, basically. Elden Ring is already the most accessible FromSoft game. If you're complaining about Shadow of the Erdtree being too hard, you don't have to play it. You are definitely allowed to criticize them. And I also think you should explore more because you will find another build or another means to make things easier. Like, I think you're being impatient is...
Whoa. Are you complaining? What if I don't want to explore more? What if I'm the type of gamer that just want to go straight to the bosses and beat them? Shouldn't I have an accessibility option that just says, oh, make me strong as fuck? Why can't I have a god mode?
What's happening realistically?
Her argumentation and points are counterintuitive to each other. It's very hard to follow.
This is for people who
coherent
don't have accessibility problems. But what if, so that we could actually allow disabled players to play these games, which is a thing I care about, you just, at the end of the game, you just get a screen with all your stats. How many times you died, what options you did or did not have on. So people can still brag.
That's not needed. That's not needed.
And still show off, because again, that is clearly a thing people like doing with these games. I just feel like it would solve a lot of this conversation. This is really not about asking Miyazaki, FromSoft, to make the game easier where accessibility is concerned. It's about allowing more people to play it.
That's the same thing. And it will also affect their development cycle. And it will also affect it further because, people have finally got something they've asked for years. So we'll continue to ask for more. Which they're already under, like... I would hate to be one of the devs for Dark Souls games, Souls games in general. Because holy shit, people are unquenchable.
And sometimes people just need different settings to be able to do that. More customization to be able to do that. Does it make sense? I feel like it makes sense. Basically, I'm just so surprised that we're in a timeline where literally enough people are complaining about it. Like, all of the games journalists gave it a 10 out of 10, but the Steam reviews... The gamers are the ones saying it's just...
Reviewers aren't to be trusted nowadays. Everyone should know this already. Some reviewers have integrity, but most are just driven by either monetary gain, source and traffic through their sites, or continued cooperation with the devs or publishers to get their hands on these games faster than everyone else, so they can make content faster and thus gain more money and get more followers or subscribers. It's very hard not to understand this. It's very easy to follow. Reviewers giving this game 10 out of 10. It's not because this is a 10 out of 10.
Too damn hard for any of those people who do not have accessibility specific issues. You just gotta explore more, dude. You can do it. You can do it. I think you're being impatient. I think you can do it.
So suddenly...
And to the accessibility conversation that comes up every single time FromSoft has a new game, I would love to see them have more accessibility options. I would not like to see them make the games easier or less challenging.
They would effectively make them easier and less challenging if they...
And it's a difficult balance to strike, obviously, but I feel like I found kind of a solution. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, that's the video. So first of all...
Of the Shadow, funny. You can play else second half of this video. We're not particularly accessible to disabled players. And people are asking for accessibility. I'm not accessibility is concerned. People who are disabled, the intent. Here's the thing I want to spell out where accessibility... Multiple kinds. There are situational disability is concerned if you have disabilities. It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. If you have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring.
That's the take of this video already. Don't go sending harassment towards Alana. I disagree with a lot of what she has done and said. That's fine. Just don't go and tell her to kill herself because that's fucking over the line. That's insane. So don't send hate. Criticism, that's fair. But this is my take on the whole thing. I think having a type of disability options in these games would effectively also ruin their inherent design somewhat too. Because if having accessibility options, you need to change the way the core game is working to some degree. That's just my thought on it all. I think devs having accessibility options is fine, and I think devs not wanting to have those, fine too. But Jesus Christ, that statement is just actually wild. Completely insane. Thanks for watching. I'll see you.